After a wild week 8 in college football, it's time for our updated top 25 going into week 9. And I tell you what, this is probably the hardest top 25 I've had to do this year. Maybe the hardest top 25 I've had to do in a long time, in many years. It's really tough because we have a ton of 2-loss teams that all have, a case to be ranked. They all have an argument. And so this week, I won't just give you my top 25. I'll also run through some of the teams that I considered, and we'll start there. These teams, again, I did not have them ranked. Again, we're basing this all off of resume at this point. Early in the season, you're trying to figure out who the best teams are, and I believe that's the correct way to rank the teams. To find it out, based on performance, who's beating who, and all that. And looking at common opponents, all those types of things that you have to do early on. But when we get to this point, when we're in the second half of the season, it's about what you've earned and it's about your resume. And I talk about that each week. As we go through the season, it shifts more and more and more. And now we're pretty much all resume. One thing I did want to clear up. Last week I said that the playoff committee does not look at winning margin and all that. To be clear, I do look at that. I thought I said this last week, but I do look at the games that you win comfortably, and so it's I'm looking at how many games did you win close, and then did you beat teams, did you blow them out, and so that is a separator for some of these teams. And again, let's get to the teams that I considered: LSU, Nebraska, Minnesota, TCU, Michigan, Texas, and USC. So all of these teams, I think you can make an argument for. If you want to rank these teams, I'm not going to really argue with you, because they do have a case, but I believe the teams I have ranked ahead of them have a little bit better resumes. I also am looking at who you lost to. I think that fact has to factor in. So it's who did you lose to, who did you beat, how many games, which of these games did you win comfortably, all of those types of things. And I have a spreadsheet, and I list all of this out, and I compare the resumes. So I do go pretty in depth here. And again, these teams just not quite enough on the resume to beat out a couple of one-loss teams, because I'm looking at Houston and Tulane, as you see, 21 through 25. So Tulane at 6-1, they have one fewer loss than those teams I just mentioned. Their one loss came to Ole Miss, who I still have in the top 10, and they have a win over Duke, so they have a win on their resume. If they didn't have anyone, like for example, Navy doesn't have anything on the resume, so that's why I don't have Navy ranked. I didn't even consider them. But Tulane has a win over Duke, and that's a decent Duke team, a 3-loss team. Then we've got Houston. Their one loss came to Texas Tech. That's also, for me, still a top 10 team, which we'll show you. They have a win over Colorado and a convincing win over a win over a 3-loss Arizona and a convincing win over a 4-loss Colorado. That's where I draw the line. If your opponent has more than 4 losses, I don't look at it. It doesn't do anything for the resume. A 4-loss team doesn't do much, but if you're winning that game comfortably, that tells me that, because there are some 4-loss teams that are not bad. I mean, you look at Florida, you look at Florida State, Auburn, some of these teams, they're not bad. They've just played a really tough schedule. So that's why I do still look at the 4-loss teams when I do my resume comparison. But again, Houston and Tulane have just enough on the resume to be ranked ahead of some of those 2-loss teams. Now, some of those 2-loss teams might have a little bit better resume in terms of wins, but they've got 2 losses. And again, we're talking about 2 losses to top 10 teams for Houston and Tulane. That's why I have them ranked. I did glance at the AP poll after I finished mine, and I don't think that Houston and Tulane were ranked there. I believe they should be. We've got Arizona State number 24. The win over Texas Tech is a big win. That is a huge resume builder. You also got a win over TCU, who is, again, considered to be in the top 25. And then Baylor's only a 3-loss team. So you've got 3 pretty solid wins. The loss of Mississippi State does make me a little hesitant on Arizona State, but Mississippi State, I believe, is a pretty good team. They've lost some close games. And the Utah game, I know they got blown out in that game, but they did not have Sam Levitt. So I'm trying to how do you balance all that? It's tough. That's why I say these rankings this week are really, really hard. But I've got Arizona State. I think they've done enough to be ranked. Tennessee, really, this is about their losses coming to Georgia and Alabama, 2 top 10 teams. And they have a decent win over Mississippi State. And again, when you compare like Tennessee and Arizona State has a better resume. Tennessee, in terms of wins, Tennessee though has has lost to better teams, and they beat Mississippi State. Arizona State lost to Mississippi State. That's really the tiebreaker there. And then Utah. I've got Utah ranked. Even after the loss, they lost to Texas Tech, top 10 team, BYU, undefeated team. Those are not bad losses. And then they have a blowout win over Arizona State. Now, again, without Sam Leavitt, how much credit can you give them there? Maybe not for the win, but the fact that they won that game easily, I think it does matter. And then it went over UCLA, who now looks like a pretty good football team, which is crazy. They blew them out. So I've got Utah ranked. Again, I think when you look at who they lost to and the fact that they have a couple of decent wins there, the resume is enough to rank the Utes. All right, let's move on to 16 through 20. I've got Illinois at number 20. You have to look at who they lost to, top two teams in the country, Indiana and Ohio State. I realize they were not close in those games, but again, we're talking about the two best teams in college football. They have a win over USC, that team that, again, I considered in the top 25. A comfortable win over Duke, a 3-loss, pretty good Duke team. So I think Illinois, really based on those losses, that's why I have them ranked. Again, when you look at these teams, that maybe was the separator for me. Like Illinois lost to the two top teams. Utah lost to top 10 teams. Then you look at USC, they lost to two-loss teams. You look at, you look at Michigan, they lost to Oklahoma and USC. Texas lost to Florida. The losses really do matter when we are separating these really close teams. So yeah, I've got Illinois ranked. I've got Cincinnati ranked. They do have the loss to Nebraska, but they've got a win over Iowa State, a win over Kansas, a win over UCF, and again, only one loss. South Florida also only one loss. They lost to Miami, top 10 team. How much credit do we give them for wins over North Texas and Boise State? I don't know, but they did win those games comfortably, and they've got a win over Florida, who has proven that they're not a bad football team. So yeah, South Florida I think should be ranked. Louisville, only loss came to Virginia. Virginia ranked just ahead of them. Louisville has the win over Miami. They also have one over Pitt. Pretty good resume. And then for Virginia, what's holding them back? It's the loss to NC State. That keeps them from really, even if they had a better loss, I don't know if it would really change much. They've got the win over Louisville. That's their best win. A comfortable win over Stanford. Not a great win, but again, comfortably. And then they have the win over Florida State. So Virginia is ranked right there. And then we have, let's move on to the top 15. All right, Missouri 15, Vanderbilt 14. So this is a tricky one. Both teams lost to Alabama. How much credit do you give them for losing to a top 5 team in close games? So you have to measure that, but then you have to also look at the resumes. Vanderbilt has one over LSU. That's a pretty good win. LSU not looking great right now. They have a comfortable win over South Carolina. Missouri wins over Kansas, South Carolina, Auburn. So these teams have wins over decent teams, but really lack a signature win. You could argue Vanderbilt's win over LSU is a signature win. Again, I don't know how good LSU really is right now. I do not have them ranked. But they lost to Bama. That's why they are ahead of Virginia, Louisville, South Florida, Cincinnati. They lost to a really good team. Then we've got Oklahoma ahead of them. The loss to Texas hurts. And again, this is another team that it's tough to figure out where to rank them. But they do have that comfortable win over Michigan. They won that game by multiple scores. Same thing for South Carolina. They blew them out this week. They had a win over Auburn. Again, the wins are there for them, and that's really the separator with Oklahoma and Vanderbilt, because I think Michigan and LSU are similar wins. Oklahoma has a comfortable win over Michigan, where Vanderbilt won a close game over LSU. Like I said, I do take in the winning margin. I take that into consideration. Notre Dame at number 12. Wins over, or losses, I should say, to Miami and Texas A&M. Those are top 10 teams. Again, that's why I've had them ranked as high as I've had them. Now they've got a win over USC. That's a pretty good win for the resume. Boise State, NC State, comfortable wins there. But with 2 losses, I just could not. I couldn't put one of these undefeated teams behind them, because you look at Georgia Tech and BYU, which we don't see by BYU yet. They don't have a great resume, but they haven't lost, and they put together 4 decent wins, both Georgia Tech and BYU. 4 decent wins. And you look at Georgia Tech, they beat Wake Forest. That's a 2-loss team. I don't think people really give them much credit for that win, but that's a 2-loss team. Duke's a 3-loss team. Colorado and Clemson, not horrible. So you've got 4 decent wins there, and it's really just the fact that they're undefeated. And that's what it's going to come down to. Winning close games is going to matter. And Georgia Tech's been able to do that. And you see BYU right there ahead of them at number 10, also 7-0. Very close with BYU and Georgia Tech. I mean, both teams, you look at their wins. They have a win over Utah and Wake Forest, two lost teams. Arizona and Duke, 3 lost teams. They both beat Colorado. You look at Georgia Tech, win over Clemson. BYU went over Stanford. I mean, these resumes are almost identical. I do have that, BYU has a comfortable win over Stanford. Georgia Tech's wins have all been close, so that's really the separator. Also, I think Utah is better than Wake Forest, even though both teams only have 2 losses. So that's why I've got BYU ahead of Georgia Tech, but it's very close. Ole Miss at number 9. I realize, they don't have a great resume in terms of wins, but their one loss came to Georgia. They have a comfortable win over Tulane. That matters. LSU, and then they also beat Kentucky. Again, not a great resume, but those comfortable wins matter. And same thing for Miami, a comfortable win over South Florida. When you look at the teams ranked below these teams, they don't have a lot of wins like that. Most of their wins are close. You look, Miami also has a win over Notre Dame. Comfortable wins over Florida and Florida State. So despite the loss to Louisville, Miami still has a really good resume in terms of their wins. That's why I still got them in the top 10. Texas Tech also, I think I saw them, they dropped out of the top 10. That one's, I don't know if I agree with that. Arizona State on the road, close loss without their starting quarterback. I'm not going, that's not a bad loss. And then you look at their comfortable wins over Houston, Utah, Kansas, like they're blowing teams out. That has to matter a little bit. And so I do think Texas Tech should still be in the top 10. And then we've got Oregon ahead of them. Their only loss coming to Indiana, arguably the top team in the country right now. They have a comfortable win over Northwestern. I don't think people are really giving them a lot of credit for that win. Northwestern's a 2-loss team, and they blew them out. I mean, they completely dominated that game. Penn State, obviously not a great win. That does hurt them a little bit. And then Rutgers, they completely blew them out this past weekend. So Oregon, again, with some blowout wins against decent teams and their loss coming to who is my number 1 team, I think Oregon should still be ranked in the top 10. And then we go to the top 5. Georgia at number 5. Like, I don't think you can really argue this top 5. Like, this is I said that it was hard to rank the teams. I think the top 5 is clear cut. You look at the resumes, you compare these teams. It's very even. It's very clear to me. Indiana has the best resume with that one over Oregon. Ohio State's been a little bit more dominant, but you compare those games against Illinois, Indiana beat them a little bit easier. So that's, I think Indiana should be 1. Texas A&M undefeated with the resume they've got. Pretty good. And then Alabama and Georgia, to me, are the best 1-loss teams in terms of resumes, especially Alabama. I mean, they've put together a bunch of really good wins. Missouri, Georgia, Vanderbilt, Tennessee. You look at Georgia, wins over Tennessee and Ole Miss. Those are really good wins. And Georgia's only losses to Alabama. Now, Alabama did lose to Florida State, so if they did not have a really good resume, I don't know that I would be able to rank them this high because Florida State's not looking great right now, but that resume, you just can't argue it. I think their 4 wins, Missouri, Georgia, Vandy, Tennessee, I don't think anyone has anything even close to that. Probably not. I mean, that's 3 wins over 1-loss teams. Georgia has 2 wins over 1-loss teams. No one else in the country has more than 1. So, yeah, these resumes are very strong, and I think that's clear-cut to have them at 4. You can even make an argument that Alabama could be ahead of Texas A&M, but it's close enough that one loss has to matter, and that's why Texas A&M, I think, has to be number 3. But that's how I would rank the teams heading into Week 9 based off of resume. Give me your rankings, your feedback down in the comments below.